Okay, we've got a very special guest speaker tonight, and Carol Salter, would you like to come up and introduce him tonight? Our guest speaker is a Ventura County Tea Party activist, a California Republican Party delegate, and he is a publicity director for the Ventura County California Republican Assembly. So he's putting in a lot of time in all those organizations, and it's been good to hear what he is doing. We are honored here tonight to have George Miller speak to us.
Hello, everybody. Hi. Is this the Rhino Prevention Club? That's the reason I'm associated with CRA. I have never been involved in politics until the last 3 years. I just kind of lived my life, survived, took care of my family, and voted regularly, not always knowing what the heck I voted for. And I was recruited to the Tea Party by a person you probably all know. His name is Barack Hussein Obama. He's the man that brought me into the Tea Party. He was the straw that broke the camel's back. I think it started with the real estate crash of 2007, which was very expensive for me. Then the stock market crash of 2008, which was even more expensive. That was nothing compared to what's happened since January 20th, 2009. That's really what put people in the streets and started the Tea Party. Now, some people will tell you that Ron Paul started the Tea Party 10 years ago. Well, yeah, that's true. We had 7,000 people. We had about 1.5 million people in Washington, D.C. on 9/12/09. And you'll notice that there aren't the same crowds that there were a couple of years ago. There's a couple of reasons for that. First of all, the Sunday Patriots have gone home. And the second thing is we realized that carrying signs and calling legislators that weren't going to change their votes anyway was kind of a useless prospect. So that led directly to starting the Ventura County Tea Party. And one of our co-founders, David Stewart, is here. David, raise your hand. 6 of us started that Tea Party, and the reason we did it is we all belonged to different Tea Parties, and we realized that we really weren't accomplishing what we wanted to accomplish. Instead of writing to legislators in Washington, we decided we had to change the legislators in Washington. That hasn't worked out quite so well in California as it has in other places. It's one of the things I want to talk about tonight, and that's the reason I joined the CRA. A little bit about my background. I'm originally from New York, in case you haven't gathered from my accent already. I've been in California for 30 years, so it's somewhat civilized me. I currently live in Oxnard, a town which is 73.5% Latino, according to the census. And I really like it in Oxnard, actually. I don't like illegal immigrants, but frankly, I like most of the people who surround me in Oxnard. I live at the beach. Back to the Tea Party again. I was never involved politically at all. I finally realized that we absolutely had to do something, and I didn't think that the Republican Party was doing what we wanted to do. You all think the Republican Party is doing a great job? Raise your hand, please. One hand, two hands. Okay. Not exactly a majority. I read the Republican platform in 2008. I love the Republican platform. I just don't love what's happening with Republican candidates and what they're doing right now in Washington, D.C. or in Sacramento, California. So we set out to try to make some changes. And when we started our Tea Party, we decided that we wanted to be political activists, that we wanted to endorse candidates, which is something the Tea Parties didn't do initially. And we also decided to come out with a voter's guide. We decided to involve ourselves more in political activity than we did in the demonstrations. The demonstrations are very emotional, they're very satisfying, but they really don't get a lot accomplished at all. Most of you looked at the Occupy Wall Street in the last few weeks. What do you think of that? Yeah. I'm not quite sure they know what they're doing either, but I do know that the organizers behind that are not our friends. I think about 2/3 of the kids out there really want to do something. I'm not quite sure what. They're being manipulated. So we have to do a counter motion from our side. A little bit more about the Tea Party. Most of you saw the famous Santelli rant in Chicago, where it went on like 15 minutes. A lot of people thought that started the Tea Party. It didn't really. It was just kind of a spark that ignited it. Several different organizations, Dick Harvey's group, Freedom Works and stuff like that, actually helped to start the Tea Party via publicity. They started websites, they did publicity campaigns, they organized rallies, and then they quickly lost control of what was going to happen. A lot of people in the Tea Party felt that the Republicans were trying to co-opt the Tea Party and manage it and move it to endorsing their run-on candidates. That's not exactly what's happened. It's actually moved the country in a more conservative direction, but not really as conservative as most people think. You know, we did have a huge victory in 2010. We took a lot of seats away, but it's not so much that we won, it's that the Obama people lost. Yeah. People didn't vote for the Republicans because they thought we were the party that was going to be their big friend. They did it because they were scared to death of what was happening in Washington, D.C. So we have what's perceived to be a mandate, but really isn't. Now we can't blow that mandate. We need to fix it. From a Tea Party standpoint, of the 240-odd people in the House of Representatives are Republicans, only about 50 of them are really Tea Party candidates. How do we know? Look at which ones voted against the budget deal. How many? 55? 50? Those are the Tea Party candidates. The other ones are not. Some people think that the budget deal was a great victory for the Republican Party. A victory that raises spending $7 trillion over 10 years, I don't think it's a victory for you. I think we have a big problem. We fully funded Obamacare. We basically continued the upward vector of the budget for the next 10 years, unless we reverse that next year. We have the wrong people in charge. Not only from California, but from Ohio and other states. And that's our mission, to try to change those things. Our Tea Party has several principles. Basically, what really got the Tea Party going was fiscal issues, basically spending. The Wall Street crash, the bailouts, the huge deficits. And the deficits really are much larger than anyone thinks. Everyone knows that the national debt is what, about 15 trillion right now?
Which number you use.
Yeah, 14 to 15 trillion, could be a lot higher. Well, that's really only the tip of the iceberg. In addition to that, according to usdebtclock.org, the unfunded liabilities of the U.S. government, primarily for Medicare, the drug program, and Social Security, exceed $100 trillion. Some of you remember a bill that Ron Paul sponsored to get the Fed audited last year that had over 300 co-sponsors, which got turned into the mess called the Dodd-Frank bill. Buried in there was something actually pretty good. They had a very watered-down audit of the Federal Reserve, which most of you probably don't even know came out in June or July of this year. And anybody here in the accounting profession? Financial? No financial people? Ah, okay. Well, to you, does an audit usually have like a balance sheet, an income statement, cash flow statements, risk analysis, and stuff like that? None of those were in the audit. What was in the audit that was interesting is the total number of bailouts, which evenly distributed between U.S. and foreign sources, of $16.1 trillion. You all saw it in the headlines, right? Well, funny thing, they didn't make a big deal about that, did they? If you'd like to see that, go onto the Ventura County Tea Party website, and we have it prominently displayed for your edification. So our debt is much, much, much larger. In fact, the largest in the world relative to the GDP of any country, no matter what you hear. No matter what we do, we're going to have a major hard crash. There's no way around it at this point. Well, the thing is what to do about it, how to pick up the pieces. That's really a lot of what we're about. We have some survivalist type people who are building bunkers ready. Maybe that's a little bit extreme. We may not have Mad Max, but it's certainly not going to be like it is today in 5 years. We're not going to have a recovery in the next couple of years, and we base on that premise. But we believe in returning to the U.S. Constitution, which is considered now a radical viewpoint. Because we have a living Constitution, and it's a document, quote, written over 100 years ago, that was written for an agrarian society, not a sophisticated society we have right now. Well, how much has human nature changed in the last 235 years?
Not so much.
Not a hell of a lot, really. So what minor changes we need are not the ones that they're talking about right now. We believe in much smaller government, the free enterprise system, and capitalism, unlike the OWS people demonstrating right now. Those are the core principles of the Tea Party. If you go onto any Tea Party website, you'll see all kinds of, quote, social issues as well. For example, one thing that most people in the Tea Party agree with people in the CRA is the so-called pro-life issue. We feel very strongly about that, although that is not one of the main motivating principles of the Tea Party, but certainly a very important one. We also believe in a strong defense. A strong defense, though, does not mean spending $800 billion a year and having bases in over 100 countries. We don't need that much defense. We need the right defense. So we do support a strong defense, but we also realize that if we go broke in doing it, we're going to be weaker than if we don't. Any questions about the basic Tea Party concepts? How close is that to what you think your concepts are? Pretty well aligned? Yeah. Not too bad, right? Okay. As far as how we work, our Tea Party is a little bit different than most. One thing we observe by belonging to other Tea Parties is that most of them tend to be dominated by one individual who usually holds office while in the elections, which seems exactly contrary to the principles that the Tea Party espouses. So we went to the other extreme. We not only don't have a single leader, we don't have a leader, period. Believe it or not, we have a steering committee of 8 people that runs the Tea Party. And the way it works, if one of them has an event that he's really, or he or she is really motivated about, that person takes charge of the event, convinces other people to help him or her, then does it. For example, we had a debate of the Ventura City Council candidates on Monday, and David and Lana Leslie decided they were going to take that event and run with it, so we all just got in line behind them and helped, and we did it. It worked very well. We find that eliminates a lot of the political problems that exist often in political organizations. It sounds so silly to have a political problem in a political organization. We're supposed to be experts, should be able to manage that. So we've taken the other extreme to do that. And it's worked for us. So it's very grassroots. We have no rank. We use the power of leadership, ideas, and commitment to do it. As far as money, we don't have a bank account. We're not even organized. If we need something done, we write checks directly to the vendors. If we don't have enough people to write the checks, we don't do it. That keeps you pretty frugal, and we don't have any deficits, by the way. Unless you count my own personal deficit or David's or other people. So we don't really need a lot of money to operate, because most of what we do is for other people. We encourage our people to contribute money to candidates running for office, not to the Tea Party. Our website is homemade. Our signs are homemade. The camera you're looking at was paid for personally by David. The flyers, the literature that I left here tonight was paid for personally by me. We have a strong emphasis on education. We realize that we're not going to be able to change the politics of the country overnight. In California, it's especially true. We were extremely disappointed by last year's elections. Basically, not only did we lose every statewide election, but we lost it with rhinos to add insult to injury. We do not advocate rhinos. In fact, we also had a big fall off in activity of our Tea Party after the primary. People were so disappointed with the quality of the candidates that they decided some of them didn't want to be involved. Which is one of the reasons we got together with the Republican Party, and one of the reasons that are now a state delegate, county delegate, CRA member, Christian Coalition member, and several different other Republican organizations. I have to kill you if I told you about them. We're attempting to, what I would say, infiltrate the Republican Party. I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean to make them actually carry out what's in the platform. So I love the state platform. Has anybody actually read the platform, by the way? Did you know that you almost lost your platform 3 weeks ago at the convention? Yeah, big secret. When I went to the March California Republican Convention, I was told that they were organizing a platform committee. So I immediately signed up for it, and that's the last I ever heard from the platform committee. That's also the last I heard about the platform until about 8 days before the convention, when I saw a memo that a new platform was written, and it basically looked like Democrat-like to me. So I went to the convention in LA, and I walked in and picked up a copy of the program. Guess what? No platform debate. So I asked around, I said, how come we're not discussing the platform? I said, oh, that's after the convention. The executive committee will vote on the platform. The new Rhino platform was narrowly averted, but how many of you here? Anybody here on the Central Committee? No Central Committee? Yeah, okay. Was there any debate or discussion about the platform at any Central Committee meeting?
I haven't been to any of those meetings for some time, but at least last time I remember going to a county central committee meeting, there wasn't any discussion.
Yeah, well, we didn't have a word about it, and one of our members is also the state treasurer, so you would think he would know about it, but somehow that never thought it important enough to bring it up to Central Committee meeting for a year. We found out at the convention what was going on. So those are the type of things we like to avoid. So pursuant to that, we are sending Tea Party members to every Central Committee meeting to get involved, whether or not they're voting members. They don't like what's going on, they will raise the subject themselves. Had a most interesting talk at last night's Central Committee about Obama failing an E-Verify test. That's not the kind of thing that usually gets brought up in the Central Committee. If you listen to Karl Rove on Fox, you'll hear that we're a bunch of idiot birthers doing it. But we bring up things like that in the Central Committee. We bring up things like the platform. We bring up things like the half-assed solution to Proposition 14 passed in the March convention, which basically disenfranchises most of the Republicans. Do you know that you really won't have a Republican primary anymore? Proposition 14 takes that away from you. We could have done a primary before the primary. In fact, there's actually a plan to do that, but it doesn't go into effect for 5 years. 5 years. In politics, that's a lifetime. So those are the types of things we should get involved in, not just to listen to whatever we're told and go out and walk precincts and make calls. Yes, ma'am?
Yes, and I think it is important to note that that when in getting rid of the issues on what kind of primary you have, one of the big issues is obviously the issue of freedom of association, and that it was on the basis of freedom of association that the court up in Washington State threw out the blanket primary many years ago.
Has anybody read the Republican lawsuit against Proposition 14?
And
Me neither, possibly because there is none,
Yeah.
right? Why isn't the party doing something about it? Because what you said is absolutely right. It should be something we should be able to win in
In
court.
Washington State, one of their well-known talk show men, and that's Kirby Wilbur of Seattle, certainly talked about it on one of his talk radio programs.
One thing we've learned as a Tea Party, particularly in California, is you can't get anything done without cooperating with people. So I've said a few confrontational things, but we try to do it in a cooperative manner. I know that sounds contradictory. Let's talk about some of the partnerships that we have. One of the first things we set up was with the Republican Party itself. The Republican Party regards us with great suspicion. Several times I asked if they would distribute notices of our meeting, and they said no, they won't. And I said, why is that? They said, well, because you're not a Republican organization. I said, well, okay, fine. Then they come to us, they want us to publicize their affairs. We actually do when it suits us, by the way. So there's a little bit of distrust between the Republican Party and the Tea Party because the Republican Party considers us a threat and to some extent a disruptive influence. We made it very clear what our objectives are. What we're finding is about half of the Republicans really are more what you might call moderates. Really not the same as CRA people and Tea Party people. So there's a major schism within the party in what direction we'll go in, which is part of the problem. Now, the people that told us that are also big Romney and Perry supporters, by the way. Most of us are not. Also, we work with other Tea Parties, and what we're finding is some Tea Parties work together very well. We formed an organization called the Tea Party Action Alliance, which the Santa Barbara Tea Party chose not to associate with. However, we do have Santa Clarita, 2 in Thousand Oaks, 1 in Simi, 2 in Simi actually, and 1 in Ventura. And we work together cooperatively because collectively we have 1,500 members. So we have a lot more clout to get things done and a lot more support when we need something done. We go to CRA meetings. We serve on the CRA board of directors, and several CRA people are on our Tea Party committee as well. I know this sounds scandalous, but we also work very closely with the Libertarian Party. In fact, I found the Libertarian Party to be a better friend of property rights than the Republican Party. Case in point, in March of this year, Ventura County tried to ram something down the throat of the collective populace called the Initial Study Guidelines for Environmental Affairs. And what it was is something that would take away a lot of property rights of farmers and large developers and force them to do covenants on their property and create all kinds of new imaginary threatened species that aren't even threatened by the EPA. So I went to the Republican Party and I said, will you guys help us with this? And they said, no. I said, how come? He said, well, A, we don't have any people to do it, and B, we don't believe in getting involved in political affairs like that. I said, well, exactly what is the hell is it that you do? They said, well, our job is to get candidates elected, any Republican candidates elected. This is why there's a Tea Party that's separate from the Republican Party. Does that answer your earlier question, ma'am? You asked me that question. That's why. There are some blind spots in every organization. We have them as well, not just the Republican Party. We also, with the Libertarian Party, worked on the Agenda 21 issue. How many folks are familiar with Agenda 21? Agenda 21 is probably the greatest true conspiracy in the last 30 years perpetrated on the United States of America. What it is, it's a plan put together by the United Nations, which uses as its base rationale that global warming is going to destroy the world unless we radically cut down the consumption of energy, food, and everything else that makes life worthwhile. So we took a good look at it and decided that A, we don't agree with the objectives, and B, we don't agree with the basic assumptions behind it. So we organized the first anti-Agenda 21 opposition in Ventura County in cooperation with the Libertarian Party and the Property Rights Association. So that's now one of our main causes. Still no help from the Republican Party, by the way, on that. I don't know what we have to do to get action. We also work closely with the Christian Coalition. We find our aims are very closely allied with ours. There's an awful lot of cross-membership among CRA, Christian Coalition, and the Tea Party. Great organization. Not everyone in our Tea Party is Christian. We have agnostics, we have Jews, we have animists, all kinds of interesting people in the Tea Party that you wouldn't normally see at a Republican meeting. Yet somehow we work together very well. We also have an alliance with something called the Election Integrity Project. Anybody ever heard of Election Integrity Project? What really triggered this group were things leading up to the 2010 California election and also the infamous Nevada election for senator, where Sharon Angle, who was ahead 5 points in polls, mysteriously lost by 5 points in the last 5 hours of the election day. And Sharon's one of the main movers behind that. In case you don't know it already, by the way, Sharon is now the regional vice president in charge of the Republican Assembly for the Western states. So she now is in our organization. She's one hell of a gal, let me tell you. We spent a whole day with her a few weeks ago. She came out to our Tea Party and lectured on election integrity, also how to vet candidates. She has some very good ideas for vetting candidates, which I think are frankly better than the questionnaires we're using right now. So we're working with that group as well. We also work with the Constitution Party and the American Independent Party, neither one of which is capable of fielding or winning any elections at all. The main reason we work with those groups is primarily intellectual content. We find that those groups have some very good ideas about freedom, independence, and the Constitution, which might be useful if we brought them into the Republican Party, so we've done that. I actually belong to 4 parties, those are 2 of the parties. But I'm registered as a Republican and I work as a Republican. And some of you might think that's a little crazy, but if you really give it some good thought, it makes a lot of sense. Because when it comes to election time, I walk up to those people and said, you know, we have the most important presidential election of your lifetime in a year. Now, you're going to vote for some tuna-bill candidate who's going to get 0.5% of the vote, or you're going to let Obama stay in office, or you're going to help us. You need to really take a good hard look at this and decide what really makes sense to you next year. And I've had some very good results doing that, by the way. There's more people like that than you might think. There's an awful lot of people that don't vote at all, or vote crazy ways, or just vote the way their friends tell them to do. So be your friend and tell them how to vote. We need to get that independent group to win the next election. And I'm not just talking about the presidential election. We also work with some organizations you may not have even heard of. We work with the Tea Party Patriots, which is a national Tea Party organization, Tea Party Nation, Tea Party Express, the 912 Project, as well as Oath Keepers. Anybody ever heard of Oath Keepers? That's a completely different flavor. You look like an Oath Keeper, by the way. I had you pecked as soon as you walked in the door.
Yes, it is.
How many folks have been in the military or in the military right now? Officers? Okay. The officer's oath is not to the President of the United States of America. What is it to?
Constitution.
Where? To the U.S. Constitution. What Oath Keepers said is that when the chips are down and we are in a bind, we go with the Constitution first. You figure out the rest. And you see why Oath Keepers is very important right now. I'll leave the rest on set. I am a very strong supporter of the Oath Keepers for that reason. You recall reading a book by a certain president that said that if the chips are down, we go with the Muslims, not Oath Keepers. Yes?
Matter of fact, all that I've been involved in the last 10 years and stuff like that, that's the only thing, that organization's the only thing that just gives me a little glimmer of hope that we could pull ourselves out of all this stuff.
Amen.
If
Yeah.
it wasn't for them, it's going down the drain.
Yeah. Well, I'm a boater and a kayaker, and one of the first things I learned is if you don't have a navigation system like a compass or a GPS, you don't know where the hell you're going. And oath keepers are a form of compass for the country, and that's why we affiliate. Oath keepers are also on the Homeland Security terrorist warning list, along with Tea Party members, returning veterans, gun owners, and certain other treasonous characters like that. I meet 7 of the 9 things. I only miss veteran and militia, so they haven't arrested me yet. Other possibilities to work with, we're trying to form an alliance with the Republican National Hispanic Caucus, which is an absolutely fantastic kick-butt group, by the way. I've been to several of their things, and they have some very good ideas about how to bring the Latino conservative community on board the Republicans. In most cases, it's a matter of marketing, but there are certain things we have to do differently as well. Probably the single biggest thing is the immigration policy. And surprisingly enough, they do not recommend blanket amnesty. What they recommend is some kind of a guest worker program and a lot of things in communications and marketing. And so we are working with them. Living where I do is extremely important, since 72.5% of our potential members fall into that category. We also work with different churches and Americans for Prosperity. Anybody familiar with Americans for Prosperity? The local leader of that group is Peter Floyd, who's also a Ventura County supervisor, by the way. Really good conservative guy. So we have 4 major projects going on right now. One of them, and the one that seems to be most popular, is fighting Agenda 21. And tonight, as I speak, there's a Agenda 21 event going on in Ventura County and Westlake opposing the smart meters. Some of you may know that the Santa Barbara Tea Party has been the leader in the region in opposing smart meters. We've used a lot of your material, which we thank you for, in denying smart meters and stuff like that. That's a subject to a whole meeting by itself. That's only one dimension of Agenda 21, which really calls for collecting people into really small areas, leaving much of the country complete virgin wilderness, forcing you out of your cars, forcing you away from certain appliances, metering everything you do, eliminating meat as a major food. I'm not making this up, by the way. This is on the UN Agenda site. If you'd like to know more, go to the Conejo Valley Teaparty.org, and we've set up a regional Agenda 21 fighting site right there. The second project we have is election integrity. Anybody familiar with what happened at UCSB in the last election? It's the only district in the area that had over 100% voter turnout. Those college kids sure are patriotic, civic-minded people, aren't they? That's a symptom of a wider problem, which existed in Nevada, existed in San Diego, LA County, and to a lesser degree, right in my own district. We went and did poll watching and stuff like that, discovered some horrifying things, and we really did not have the manpower to address it. Again, I approached the Ventura County Republican Department and I asked them what their position was on voter fraud. They said, we don't have one. We think it's more important to focus on turnout. Votes will take care of themselves. Another reason why the Tea Party exists. Have we justified our existence yet? Probably, right? Okay. The next one we have, what I think is the most important, is legislative action. And we have several different missions. Very similar to CRA, to recruit, vet, support, and get conservative candidates elected. How's that for alignment of objectives, huh? Right on, 100% just about, which is why we're here tonight. And the last is building membership and events. Currently we have about 1,000 people on the mailing list for our Tea Party, maybe about 1,600 for the ones in that organization I mentioned. There are 800,000 people in Ventura County, which leaves some room for improvement, wouldn't you say? So we need to get a lot more than that. So we're trying to start to get more people involved. We find as the election season approaches, people want to get more involved. The problem is by the time we get close to election, the big boys have made all the decisions about the candidates. All the money's been long since lined up, and all the deals are made, and it's a fait accompli. How do I know that? Because in February of 2010, when we were first starting our Tea Party, it was just a gleam in our eyes. We invited the local Republican muckety-mucks to visit our steering committee, and they came in and told us, all the decisions have been made already. Whitman will be nominated for governor, Harley will be nominated for the Senate. He went down the whole list. And we said, we'll see about that. Oh, we did. They were right, we were wrong. We had zero effect on the primaries because the decisions had already been made by then. So now is the time to be active, not 2 months before the election. It's too late then. To me, the primary is just as important as the general election, as we are not always really putting true Republican candidates onto the ballot. If we can't put them onto the ballot, we certainly can't get them elected, can we? That's what we hear about. And we have a few obstacles, in case you haven't noticed. The biggest single problem I think we have is communications. The so-called mainstream media is united against what we're trying to do. I guess you all know that already. And the mainstream media is not just ABC, CBS, NBC, New York Times, LA Times, Chicago Tribune. It's also Fox News, too. I know that sounds shocking. Watch very carefully. Look who owns Fox News. Murdoch and a certain Arab prince who might have financed Mr. Obama's education, by the way. Just saying. So we don't really have a strong mainstream media. Our strength really lies in talk radio, and you'll note that the Democrats tried to reinstitute the fairness doctrine last year, which would have eviscerated our talk radio strength. And they're also trying to regulate the internet now. In fact, they're running a major test of the communications media on November 9th. They're going to shut off, or attempt to shut off, every single broadcast station for 2.5 minutes, just to prove to you that they can. Now, you might have said, well, I remember back in the 50s, they did that all the time. They put up that funny thing and did the woo. That was voluntary. It is no longer voluntary. Every single broadcast station is now hardwired where they can do it remotely. Did you know that? I didn't know that until about a year ago. There's a lot of changes happening in this country that you may or may not be aware of. You may think I'm a conspiracy theorist, but everything I said can be proven. Exactly. So that's one of the reasons we exist. As far as the Republican relationship, most members of the Tea Party are Republicans. Most that aren't Republicans vote Republican when push comes to shove. We have about 15 to 20% libertarians in our Tea Party, which is higher than any other Tea Party in the region. We also have more sovereigns, anarchists, and minarchists than any other Tea Party that I can think of. The only ones we drive away, anyone that has any kind of violent hints, we don't want them around at all. We chase them away. Most of the anarchists tend to wander away after a while when they find out that we go to Republican meetings and stuff like that. We have also more Republican delegates than any other Tea Party in the area as well. I think we have 5 at the moment, maybe 6 if you consider alternates. We're going to be heavily involved in the Central Committee elections next year. Any Central Committee members? I think I asked that question. There were 2 in the room. If you want to get control of the party, it's not enough just to be in the CRA. If you don't have any voting power, then your ability to influence events is limited. Even if you're not a member of the Central Committee, you can show up and talk. You'd be amazed how much effect you can have just opening your big mouth. I have a very big mouth, so I went there and it actually had an effect, amazingly enough. So we like to bring people to all the meetings and do stuff. What I tell our non-Republican members in the Tea Party is right now the Republicans are only major bulwark between us and the commissars. I know that sounds dramatic, but this is literally true. We were basically under the commissars for all practical purposes from January 20th, 2009 until January 2010. Even now, most of the branches of government, except for the House, are Democrat. And the House appears to be Rhino right now. So I don't think we really have control of any part of the government. It's the same House that voted for the new budget deal. We were also the first Tea Party that endorsed candidates as well. And at this point, I think I've given you some stuff to think about. I'd like to know if you have any questions or comments. Feel free to disagree.
I'd like to expand more after a couple comments. It's kind of a 2-part question. Is I personally would say it was important to get the House to pass any budget,
Yes.
as opposed to the Senate. Because
I
think
totally
that would be
agree.
the issue. So the basic question is, one, sounds like you already answered the first part of the question was, do you see that as something important? And the second part would be then, do you think Paul Ryan did a reasonable job? Because you expressed to me, in other words, expand that, because to me it came across as, well, 55 against, voted because it was.
If Paul Ryan was running for president, I'd be working full-time.
Okay, so.
Paul Ryan is not a strong conservative.
So what came out of the House, you wouldn't say it's necessarily bad within the thinking that it was probably important to get a budget passed.
Well, we actually had a budget for the first time in 2 years. That alone was a major milestone. We haven't had a budget since
We're going to
Obama
get a
took
super
over.
conservative budget on 55.
Yeah.
You know,
I'm not happy with the budget because the budget basically institutionalizes $1.5 trillion
that was
deficits.
what was it?
And if you run it out, if you run the trend line out, it's a $7 trillion
I was
increase
going
in
to say
spending.
6 to
over
7.
Yeah.
And the crazy baseline budgeting method and all
Yeah.
that craziness was what,
Right.
6 to 7 trillion over 10 years and 50 billion, or 50 trillion roughly over 10 years? And now they're
Total
already got
spending.
1 trillion, 2 trillion.
Right, and I
So
don't
based on
believe
budget
that
was 6 to
either.
7.
I'll believe it when I see it.
Yeah, no, I do too.
Frankly, there's only one presidential candidate that makes any economic
But
sense
it was,
at
to me,
all.
the most conservative thing that we actually got voted.
That was a huge milestone because we were totally out of control with what happened. Excuse me?
Which one makes sense to you?
Oh, the only guy that makes economic sense to me is Ron Paul, and unfortunately I can't support him because of his foreign policies. But he's the only one that makes any sense to me at all about scaling down spending to the level of what the Constitution actually authorizes. He wants to eliminate 6 major departments, which are pretty much the same 6 that I want to eliminate. And I don't know if you agree or not.
I want to back up to the smart meters. I don't know how many people know this. I found it out through a lot of digging. But all the appliance manufacturers are starting to put in antennas in their appliances. So they're going to have ultimate control over your
They
appliances.
can turn
in
off your
home.
air conditioning at will with the system. Anybody here, any voters? Any voters in the room? Voters, like boats, yachts. You have radar on board, GPS and all that. All those are tied together by a system called NEMA, National Electrical Manufacturers Association. And what they are putting into your house is something similar to NEMA. It will have the same type of backbone network to actually actively control your appliances as you have on a typical boat.
Yeah, but they have to put the chip in, but you can opt out, thanks to the work of the Santa Barbara Tea
That's
Party.
right. You can call the utility today, get a confirmation number, they will tag your meter. They are not allowed to install a smart meter in your house until there is legislative
That's right.
resolution.
If you're in North County, it's PG&E, otherwise it's Edison.
Yeah, we're SCE down by
Lightly
us.
paid for it, there's
Yeah.
lightly paid for, Tea Party organized.
Right. We have a meeting going on Westlake right now on that exact subject, and Connie Hudson and Doug Cross, who are main activists in Ventura County, are pushing that and giving out literature everyone at that meeting and telling the utility what they can and can't
It's
do.
amazing how fast that turned around. It's just
Amazing, yeah, amazing. Well, a lot of things have turned around too. 6 months ago, if you went to a meeting in Ventura County and even mentioned the term Agenda 21, you would immediately be ridiculed, criticized, trivialized, and demonized because it was a, quote, conservative conspiracy theory. Then we brought down Rosa Coyer from Northern California, who's been fighting it for 6 years, and we downloaded the text from the United Nations website. We downloaded the text from ICLEI, which is the non-governmental, unaccountable organization which helps implement the United States. We compared it to the wording in actual ordinances at the state and county level, and guess what? Same words. End of conspiracy theory, it's real.
That's the global warming.
Well, global warming is the excuse that they use
Sorry,
for
climate
opposing it. Yeah. If you'd like to learn more about it, go on to
Can you expand on
Caneo.
that with the state of California where unfortunately we did not repeal AB 32? And also, if you know much about the 13-year roughly sun cycle, if you have views on that?
11.
Well, funny you should mention that. 32,000 scientists signed a paper basically saying that global warming is hokum. Has anyone seen that paper? 32,000 scientists. One of those 32,000 scientists came to speak to us last week. His name is Dr. Roy Clark. He's a retired scientist from Boeing. You know him? He made one kick-ass presentation completely debunking global warming mathematically on every single point. We have his full presentation on our website, VenturaCountyTeaParty.com. Look for the picture of Al Gore flaming the globe. You've probably seen that picture before. That's the headline picture. It's about 2 weeks old in our blog section if you'd like to see a really professional refutation of the global warming nonsense. I used to just think it was speculation unproven. Now I understand it's total nonsense. Sir?
1975, approximately, a satellite was launched into orbit called the Earth Radiation Budget Radiometer. And the customer was NOAA. And what they were concerned about was global cooling. And
That's right.
the
They
instrument
flipped everything.
What the instrument did was measure the the energy flux coming from the sun, and then the instrument measured the reflected and radiated energy from the ground. And the net difference was whether it was heat going in or heat coming away. And it was all about what the sun was doing. The sun was running hotter, the sun was running cooler, and they meant that was all measured. Unfortunately, the chief scientist, which was a Dr. Drummond, died before the data was completed. I don't know whatever happened to the data.
I think that information was used in Dr. Clark's presentation. He said he went through and did the thermodynamic calculations on the net effect, assuming the 100 parts per million increase in carbon dioxide was true, would contribute no more than the equivalent of 5 minutes of sun action per day to the global heat. So in other words, it's nonsense. And he also puts holes in statistical inferences and so-called hockey stick curve for you statisticians here, which is complete nonsense. And it said that all the action that's happened is well within standard trend parameters for the last several 100,000 years, quote. He has this very droll British accent and he delivers that line. It's much more effective than when I do it. Yeah.
Excuse me, one more question.
The media has pretty well tar and feathered the Tea Party. What can you do, to counteract that? Possibly a name change, like a constitutional party or something like that.
No, keep the name.
We were told by some people we shouldn't mention the term Agenda 21. You know what? I'm from New York. I don't do things that way. We just stuck it right into them and proved that they were wrong. I'm not going to change the name of the Tea Party. No. However, tactically, we have run certain events under different names than our standard events to attract constituencies that may not come to a Tea Party meeting. But no, we're not going to take down the Tea Party anytime soon. In fact, we're more confident. After the OWS demonstrations, we feel better about being the Tea Party. Compare the venues before and after a Tea Party event versus an OWS event. Compare the crime level, compare the anti-American statements, the signs, the organizers behind it, and say which would you rather have in your backyard, the Tea Party or OWS?
We're doing you a favor.
Right, it's the best thing they could do, best advertising for us, is to please continue those demonstrations as long and raucously as possible.
I was just wanting to get the complete address. You talked about Canal Valley Tea Party.
CanalValleyTeaParty.org, and go to the forum section, Agenda 21. There's also a section on global warming. And by the way, this presentation tonight, you can get our notes if you'd like. Here it is right here. If you go to tinyurl.com and put in a slash VCT 92411, you'll get the notes for tonight's presentation without the ad-lib remarks, unfortunately.
And we're putting these on the table?
Yeah, okay. That's another subject. This other subject may not receive very good reception, but I'm going to tell you anyway, because I've committed certain people to do it. In addition to all the other activities I mentioned, I'm on 3 different committees that are dedicated to get Obama out of office, anything short of shooting him at this point. And we'll vote on that as well, but that's another issue.
I volunteered.
Yeah, I don't know how you feel about it, but we don't believe, about half of us in the Tea Party do not believe that Manning has a right to occupy the White House. It's not because of where he might have been born or not born, it's because of his father. Article 2, Section 1 of the Constitution says that only a natural-born citizen can occupy the office of president. So there's been a lot of debate on what a natural-born citizen is, and it seems that 2 major organizations, any lawyers here? No lawyers? Justia.com is one of the leading legal databases, and they deleted every single reference to the Minor versus Happersett 1875 Supreme Court decision, which is the governing precedent for that for the entire legal system. And the Congressional Research Service, under the auspices of Jack Maskell, wrote a fraudulent paper on eligibility, which was given as advice to members of Congress to advise their constituents when the question was asked. They're damn lies. Okay? Have one on my welcome by doing this, or should I continue?
No.
Okay, I'll continue. I'll shut up if you want me to. Okay? Mr. Obama failed the E-Verify test in late August. Tomato pickers in Santa Barbara County have to pass the E-Verify test, but not the man that holds the nuclear football. Think about that for a minute, please. Now, what is that based on? It's based on a name match to a social security number.
Right, that's what I said. Can you elaborate more?
Yeah, social security number you might want to write down in Google tonight, 042-68-4425. That is one of 16 plus numbers that he uses. Yes, ma'am?
No, wasn't there, I'm not gonna pretend I have all the answers, but I vaguely recall that Dr. Orley Tate, some of her sources, got hold of some of that stuff.
Let me explain why. Neil Sankey is a member of the Ventura County Tea Party. He's a former Scotland Yard investigator. He currently owns Sankey Investigations. He was hired by Orley Tates in 2009 to investigate Obama's financial records. He went into the commercial financial databases that he has access to and found numerous evidence of transactions directly linked to Barack H. Obama, to the addresses that he lived in and the dates that he lived in them. And the one he's currently using in the White House right now is the number I just gave you. That's also the number on his fraudulent draft registration, which is dated 1980, but was done on a form that wasn't developed for a decade later, and the registration number in the database indicates that it was entered in 2008. You wonder why I'm pissed? And you should be pissed too. You're not only pissed about that, you should be pissed off that your Republican leaders are lying to you about it. Damn Karl Rove on Fox the other day, did anyone see that? If I was within range, I would have punched his face out. We are being plain lied to. Now why? I don't really know. We discussed that at the Central Committee meeting in Ventura County last night. Did not come up with a reasonable answer that everyone would accept. So if I came here to make you mad, I'm sorry, but I need to make you mad. That's just the tip of the iceberg. I also run in my spare time a website called constitutionalreset.com. Actually, David and I run it, which expounds on that in far greater detail, has documented evidence for every single word that I've uttered on the subject tonight. I'll end it right now unless you have other questions.
I have one question.
Yes.
What does the Republican establishment look at for the future if they continue on the way they are? What's the future vision of those guys?
Well, I'll tell you, if they nominate Romney, I'm going to be a full-time libertarian. I don't know what else to say.
No, but what is their vision?
This is
What
my
do they
last
want?
gasp. If they have a vision, they haven't shared it with me. Have they shared it with anybody here? You know, we're the Republican Party, damn it, not them. We're the Republican Party. If you don't like it, get off your butt and do something about it. I didn't see too many at the state convention in Sacramento. I saw even fewer of you at the state convention in Los Angeles. Go to those events, go to your central committee meetings, raise hell. The way I figure out, the worst they can do is throw me out or punch me. Right? I don't care. They throw me out, and I'll be a libertarian even sooner. Yeah.
And whenever you speak of Mitt Romney, and as you no doubt are aware, there are those people who will not support Mitt Romney simply because of his religious faith, because people who believe that the LDS Church is a non-Christian cult and therefore will not support it.
Well, you know, I've met politicians who are Hindus, Muslims, LDS, various flavors of Christians, some of whom I wouldn't even regard as Christian. I'm a Christian myself, fallen away Catholic and now a Protestant, which my mother would turn over a grave if she knew. And Jews. And you know what? I don't really think it matters that much. I don't think that Romney is an evil man, but I certainly don't agree with him politically.
Have you come across any book about any writings of an earlier generation LDS member named Cleon Skousen?
Yes, I certainly have.
Solid conservative, if ever there was, and Skousen was one of Ronald Reagan's advisors.
See the guy that wrote the Naked Communist book?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was. I just quoted some passages of that yesterday to some people that didn't believe that the Republican Party was supporting certain communist principles, and they asked me for proof. So I took out the 1963 House testimony, which quoted the section on communist goals from Leon's book. Funny you should mention that. So yes, just yesterday I was working with his writings. Other comments, questions? Wow, what a group. You're my kind of people, I must say. I may not be your kind of person, but you're my kind of people. Thank you very much.